I'm Whitney.
I'm Mindy.
And I'm Deb.
We're three best friends who love nerdy things.
Well, some people think we're nerdy, but we think we're pretty awesome.
This is our nerdiest thing.
This season, we are discussing A Court of Thorns and Roses and all of Sarah J. Maas's books. We are spoiler friendly, so listen at your own risk. Hello, fellow nerds. Welcome to our nerdiest thing. Today we're talking about A Court of Thorns and Roses, chapters 22, 23, and 24. But first, let's do our nerdiest vocabulary. Mindy.
In episode 7, we have a very long conversation about what we called the Mandela effect. And my 17-year-old son pointed out to me today that it is not, in fact, the Mandela effect. It is the Mandela effect. And as he so rudely pointed out, it's because the guy's name is Nelson Mandela. So whoopsies. Sorry.
Whoopsies.
I mean, we're kind of sorry, but when Mindy texted me and she told me that we had said it wrong, I told her son to get his own podcast. So you can do the same if you got a problem with it.
So that concludes our nerdiest vocabulary.
I bet my sister, when she listens to episode 7, is going to be like, you know, you guys are saying that wrong this entire time, right?
Now we do.
At least we're owning it now.
Also, why was your son listening to these episodes so late? It's been weeks.
He didn't listen. We were having a discussion.
Oh, that's funny. All right, well, let's do our nerdiest recap.
Can I fess up to something real quick before we start?
Yeah.
I'm so fucked right now. I wrote down the wrong chapters in my book, did not
Stop
read
it.
chapter 24. So this is going to be an interesting conversation. And if I get it, I'll guess.
You'll just do a summary like I do, where it's like, well, that's not the whole thing we were supposed to summarize.
Last time I did the
but
30-second recap, I only did one chapter instead of both. So it's just going to feel like normal.
All right. Well, here goes. I'm spinning our wheel o names. It's Whitney.
It is
actually
Whitney.
Okay, please make sure you get to the third chapter so that I know what is happening.
We'll see. Let me get the timer going. Okay. I'm just going to put it on my watch. Ready? And... Okay, so Lucien and Tamlin think that Feyre's bruise from Tamlin on her neck is just hilarious. And Feyre wears a dress and everyone's like, what? And then she takes Tamlin to the gallery to look at her art. And he is like, look, it's your life. It's beautiful. I love it. And she's like, okay, great. Thanks. And then a head of a fairy, but without the body, shows up in the courtyard. And they're like, it must be the Lord of the Night Court. Oh, 30 seconds is up. The end. I feel like I got through most of it.
You hit the high points for sure.
Here's what's irritating is that I have read these books before and I know what the next chapter is. And I was like, man, I have to wait to read that. I didn't.
You didn't have to.
Boo.
Oh. I think I did get through all 3 chapters. Let's just...
Congratulations.
Good job, Whitney. It's the first time I've actually gone through a whole section.
And you had us over here cracking up.
Yeah, I felt silly. Just a silly gal over here today. So let's talk about the bruise on her neck. So that's a weird segue, but let's just go with it. So at the end of the last section, it was Cal and May, and Feyre goes out of her room after multiple people have told her, stay in your room, stay away from us. Tamlin is not going to be in his right mind. And he wasn't. She sees him in the hallway. He stalks over to her, kind of pins her up against the wall, and he ends up biting her neck and leaves a bruise. So at the beginning of this section, she's like, I'm not going to hide this bruise. He should see what he did and be embarrassed by it.
The first sentence from this chapter, though.
Yes.
I awoke when the sun was high after tossing and turning all night, empty and aching.
Right. I wrote down, I said she couldn't sleep. She was so turned on all night. And then I wrote a sad face.
So then later in this chapter, it talks about how he gives her roses and she felt full again. And I wrote in my margins, I was like, roses don't fill that age.
Right.
That's not what you need right now.
You got a lot to learn.
A good rose is not what you need.
But yeah, so she's like, I'm not going to hide this. And so she doesn't. She wears her hair pulled back or pulled up so that you could see, the full bruise on her neck. And
what do you think her true motivation is there, though? Because I kind of wrote several things it could be. I kind of think she sort of thinks of it as a badge of honor.
I think she does.
I thought that she wanted everyone else to see what he did because it was wrong.
I think that she does want to embarrass him of like, you know, you weren't in your right mind. Look what you did, you animal, right? She wants to embarrass him, but I do think that she wants everybody to see like the High Lord claimed me, because she's just coming off of the kind of the highs of, you know, the High Lord of the Spring Court thought I was important enough to save from the Naga. The High Lord of the Spring Court thought that I was important and special enough to come see his special, you know, childhood place of the Glen or whatever. I think that she feels special that he like wanted her, whether it was magic or not. You
right.
know?
Because I think she knows that he's not going to be embarrassed about it.
No, but I kind of wish that he was a little bit. Like, I really did not like that whole exchange when she goes in and Lucien and Tamlin are there, and Lucien's like, what happened to your neck?
Do you want to know what I wrote twice in a paragraph of each other? Fucking gross. It's a boys club. They think it's funny. They think it's okay that he hurt her. And he's like, well, he gaslights her. He's like, well, it's your fault. You shouldn't have been where you weren't supposed to be. And maybe I wouldn't have fucking bit you. He knew enough. He was in his right enough mind not to like claw at her or have sex with her. He knew not to bite her. That's bullshit.
Yep. No,
bullshit.
I agree. I
have a lot to say about that.
I wrote like 3 times in all caps, red flag of like that whole interaction. And like Lucien, I fully did not understand Lucien's reaction in particular, because
he like laughs and he thinks it's funny.
Well, so yes, he laughs and thinks it's funny, but juxtapose that with how he absolutely lost his mind when he saw Feyre like at Calanmai and was like, if Tamlin realizes you're here, he's gonna lose it. And it's like, okay, based on that reaction, based on that freak out, you should be freaking out right now, because you should be realizing, oh my gosh, Feyre, you dumb human, came out of your room when we told you not to. Look what he did to you. Like, that's what I was trying to warn you about. But I'm like, I don't understand, why did you get mad at her the night before if you're gonna laugh about it the next day? I don't get it.
It feels like victim blaming to me.
Yeah, I don't
like,
get
well,
it.
you did this to yourself.
Well, and what makes it worse is like when he first sees it, he's kind of acting like a protective brother. Like, who did that to you? Like he's going to be mad about it. And then when he finds out it's Tamlin, he's like, ha, that's hilarious.
Well, let me say, because while we were talking about Lucien, I just had this thought that I wonder if, and this might be me giving him too much benefit of the doubt, which I tend to do with these characters, but I wonder if Lucien seeing Tamlin kind of claiming Feyre in that way is giving him a little bit more hope for the curse breaking. Like, maybe we don't have to get rid of this human and, fight Amarantha. Maybe we can actually do it, on Amarantha's terms, sort of. And I wonder if that's why he's responding in such a weird, lighthearted way. If he's seeing like, oh, Tamlin's actually starting to have feelings. Like, she's starting to have feelings. This could work, I don't know. That might be too generous. But even
with that, it's still very like, yeah, bro. Like, good job.
But it also upsets her. So you would think if that's what he was trying to do, he would have been like, okay, Tam, maybe don't bite her. Like, you don't have to bite her. Like, don't bite her hard enough to. He bruised her.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, Lucien was so freaked out for Feyre that he threw her over his shoulder and ran back to the house in the previous chapter. And so seeing proof that Tamlin did what he was afraid Tamlin was going to do, because he basically in the previous chapter is like, he might rape you. Like, you can't be here. Like, I feel like it was very heavily implied that was what Lucien was trying to save her from. And here he has bruised her, like you're saying, and Lucien, there's no concern like there was a chapter ago.
Do you feel like, though, that Tamlin was out of his mind?
No, I don't think he was at all. But Lucien wasn't there.
Right. But I think maybe what changed was maybe Lucien did realize later that Tamlin wasn't in this like crazy
he was in control kind
haze.
of.
Like, I mean, sure, he had to have sex to grow the crops, which again, okay.
Sure, Jan.
Sure you did. Something grew, it wasn't the crops. So I wonder if Lucien was like, okay, well, he's just kind of fucking whoever he wants. So I guess she'll be fine. Because also if Lucien was worried about her, when he knew Tamlin left, why didn't he also go back up to the house?
Yeah, that's
Which makes me wonder if Lucien was also
what was Lucien
having fun
doing
on Calanmai.
Well, he does say at some point in the conversation, like, other people get to partake in the great rite as well, but we have to wait for the High Lord to do it first, you know? So
Yeah.
I'm sure he probably was.
Right.
But
It's interesting because you said she's upset about it, but in the next kind of scene, she's not, which kind of leads me into what I want to talk about with these 3 chapters. It all felt very 80s, 90s, 2000s rom-com to me. Like I felt like I was reading the script for some kind of rom-com that I'd already watched. So I wanted to kind of go through some of the tropes that we see in these kinds of rom-coms and kind of compare them to ones that I know pretty well. One of them is the whole like frat boy thing. Like in all of these rom-coms, it's always like this group of boys and they're like either having a bet, which I'm going to get into also.
We
Or
talk about the she's all that factor in
We
episode
do.
7. That is
Yeah.
so funny that you say that.
and
because
a
it's
lot
the
of
same thing.
a lot of these are come from She's All That. One of the main tropes that comes across in a lot of these rom-coms is the enemies to lovers trope.
yeah.
And this is obvious. We've already talked about this being a Beauty and the Beast kind of retelling, which is sort of the quintessential enemies to lovers. But to your point about how she was upset about the bruise, she was, and she acted like she's so mad about it that she goes and she paints them as pigs, like with their faces on pigs, which is hilarious, by the way. I would love to see you draw that, Deborah.
Maybe I'll get right on that because it's like as you're saying it, I'm like,
You picturing that?
that's
Are you
really
picturing that? I know.
fun.
It sounds
But
hysterical.
like in crayons.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But she's not really mad because at the end, she's like smiling at her painting and says something like, like she's happy to have the old Tamlin back.
Can I say how much though the 3 of us love enemies to lovers?
I was.
Oh, I know.
Yes,
I know.
I was
I
just thinking
mean-
through like this book, this book, this book, this book.
in a buy sell trade book group that I'm in on Facebook, I'm trying to get this enemies to lovers trope hat right now. I mean, think about it, From Blood and Ash, and there's all these books that like we're currently talking about possibly doing for season 2, right? So King of Battle and Blood, From Blood and Ash, you've got The Cruel Prince,
Yeah.
we've talked about Kingdom of the Wicked. These are all enemies to lovers tropes because
Yeah.
I mean it's just good fun
It
writing.
is. It's
is.
good writing. But when you break it down, like she's like, oh, I'm so mad about this bruise, but that's ha 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 so funny because I have the old Tamlin back. Like,
The old Tamlin bruises you?
That's what I wrote down.
but that's what she's saying. She's like, she's because he was joking around and being lighthearted and all that stuff. So, like, for her, it was a huge shift from him being sexy, force himself on you, Tamlin.
We'll see, and that's
I
what I.
thought you said foursome. I was like, did I miss a bonus chapter?
He'd probably Lucien and
probably did
Ianthe.
he probably
Lucien,
did have a
Ianthe,
foursome.
and Feyre Tamlin would be all over that. I feel like.
I mean, I'm ready for it.
Add it to your list of things to draw.
Ianthe might be a bitch, but she's beautiful.
Yeah, she
True.
is.
Right?
That is
so,
true.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's no one in here that
She's
like,
always trying to hop into bed with somebody.
right.
Like every time we see her, I
Ianthe
feel
would
like.
be like, wait, 2 High Lords? Wait, sorry, what's your name again, Feyre? I'm just gonna go over here with these 2.
Yeah. I did write down about the like being happy that the Tamlin I know, the
Yeah.
Tamlin I knew was back, and I wrote down that is not a good dude.
Right. Like,
But I also wrote down in that same line of thinking, I think that her being excited about that and her attraction to him and, mentioning, Deb, like you said, that she laid awake all night because she was like desiring him or whatever. I think that really kind of glosses over and hides the red flags the first time you
Right.
read this, right? Like you're focused on her and her attraction and her happiness, and like that's more signs of her healing, right?
Well, it has to do with Sarah J. Maas's writing too, because he prowls down the hallway to her and he has
Yeah.
this guttural voice and he is, partially naked and like,
Yeah.
and you're like, that is kind of hot.
Right.
And then, she wakes up aching. And so she is drawing this picture of you for you of like, sexuality and it being erotic, but really it was just kind of abuse.
Well, and
Yeah.
it's sexy to be wanted, right? Like
Oh,
to
sure.
know someone is attracted to you, and that's basically what you're saying, right? The way that she describes, not Feyre, but Sarah J. Maas, the way that she describes how he's interacting with her, it's clear that he is attracted to her, and
But
that is attractive in and of itself.
Isn't part of attraction to like the chase, right? Like a big
Yeah.
part of that is like that's why we all like the enemies to lovers and the slow burn trope. It's because like you don't want someone to be like, oh, he's hot, we did it.
right.
That's not exciting.
It is
Yes.
that give and take, that sort of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Thank you, Paula Abdul. That happens with that. And so I wrote down several movies that use this trope. And these are some of my favorite movies. 10 Things I Hate About You, which I bring up a lot in this
Such
too.
a good one.
Such a good movie. The Proposal, which I just recently watched with Deborah, actually, at a craft weekend.
I was just telling my daughter last night that she and I need to watch that because
Yeah.
we watched what's the other Sandra Bullock movie? With Channing Tatum. It's The Lost City, which like no one saw.
I've
this
never
year.
seen that.
And it came out. It like had a barely theatrical release, and it is so freaking
Is it
funny.
on? Is it Netflix? A Netflix movie or something?
No, it was in theaters.
Oh.
It was one of those nights that no one could come to the movies, so me and one other person went. But they did like an early release night, which was weird for a movie that had like no marketing. But there's a lot of dick jokes. It's funny, like because they go to the island of D. I mean, for
that's
Christ's
hilarious.
sakes! And she's a smutty romance author, and Channing Tatum is her like book cover model.
Okay,
like
that
a very
sounds
Fabio
hilarious.
type. So it sounds like we're going to be watching that together soon.
Yes, that sounds like a bonus episode.
Speaking of dick jokes, We're the Millers, another movie that I just watched for the first time with Deborah, is also Enemies to Lovers, which I think, but in a different,
sure is.
but in a little bit of different vein. It's a little less rom-com and a little more just comedy, but I thought it kind of fit with this. Another one that I loved is Drive Me Crazy. I don't know if y'all remember that one.
I love
that was one of my
movie.
favorite
Yes.
movies. I love that one.
One of the best music videos to a theme song for a movie ever.
Okay, so-
Brittany, come on.
Can I tell you one that I really loved that came out around that same time was Boys and Girls. It had Claire Forlani and Jason Biggs in it, and Freddie Prinze Jr. And it's almost like an enemies to lover type of thing where they meet in high school, they hate each other, they become good friends in college, and like eventually fall in love. But it's all the same humor, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, that movie is just top notch hilarious.
I mean, there's a reason that's a well-known trope. I just thought it was interesting.
2023, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s romance movies.
I think so too. I think they need to bring that back because it was fun. The next one that is a huge thing is the grand romantic gesture. And so we kind of see this in the earlier chapters with Tamlin when he brings her to the gallery and it's like this big thing. I don't think he actually really thought he was doing a grand romantic gesture, but it ended up sort of being that way. Also in these chapters, when he gives her flowers from the garden that they'd already hung out in, I thought it's not a grand romantic gesture.
Garden.
Exactly.
That's the thing. Didn't his dad plant those for his mother?
Yes.
Right.
Mating present.
Which doesn't sound like a grand romantic gesture until you kind of know that little bit of it.
The meaning behind it.
But it's also the way an abuser appeases.
I was also going to say they have to prune those bushes anyway. Like
that is
it's
true.
not
He's probably like-
it's not like they were roses that are never picked. Like you,
Yeah.
I mean, we have rose bushes in our yard and we prune those things like every other day in the
Yeah.
spring and summer. So I mean, like there's part of me too when he did that. I was like, oh, that's really sweet. And then I was like, motherfucker, you got those from the maid.
But yeah, so that's another really like major thing, which we also see in 10 Things I Hate About You when he does he serenades her in the stands, which is really cool. And then in another movie that I absolutely adore is Can't Buy Me Love with Patrick Dempsey.
yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, it's great. And he does the thing where he gets on the lawnmower. And then, of course, there's Say Anything where he brings out
Which now, though, if a
boombox.
guy pulled up on a lawnmower, you'd be like, no.
True. But that was the whole point, that he mowed her lawn. Like, that's how it started.
Guys, some people at my prom like came on tractors.
Well, yeah,
That's because you're from Barnesdale.
So I will say, I finished high school in a really small town in Arkansas.
Yeah.
And there were some people that went mudding before they came to prom.
Nice.
In their trucks that they
Nice.
would normally mud
Yeah.
in.
in
we
their
have that too.
tuxedos and dresses?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Oh.
God we got out, Whitney. Thank God.
Me, the big city girl over here, being like,
Well,
why can't you just get a limo?
I also, I was raised in Las Vegas, right? And so
Yeah.
going to a town where you take your truck mudding
Yeah.
before you go
It's
to
a
prom.
different world,
I
isn't
mean,
it?
I think I moved like 1 minute after graduation, like as fast as I could.
I remember when we were dating because Robbie's a city,
Me and you?
a city boy. No, me and Robbie. He came to my hometown like I'm probably the first time, and he was like, "You guys only have one McDonald's." Like he could not fathom how
Where do you
small.
go?
Yeah, like how small the town was, and was like, "You don't have a Target?" Like I don't understand.
Did you take him to the movie theater that you worked at?
Of course.
Okay, good. Did you like make out in the projection room?
I I did when I was in high school and I worked there.
My husband and I keep getting off topic. I'm sorry, Mindy, but my husband and he worked at like college radio when we were dating, and he would do like his favorite band is Counting Crows, and he would do like Counting Crows nights like on Thursday, and we would just go in there and make out all the time.
Counting Crows night's my favorite night.
Round here. I'm like, yeah, it is.
Did he play the extended cuts?
Sometimes. I was trying to think of something really gross to say, and I couldn't think of anything.
So another trope that we see often is the makeover trope, where which this one really kind of bothers me, because I feel like it's always like, oh, first of all, we talked about in a previous episode, She's All That, where she's not even that unattractive. Like
she's beautiful.
She's gorgeous, and they put a pair of glasses on her and a paint smattered smock, and that's supposed to be ugly or something. I don't know. So in this,
I'm fucked then. I mean, right now I have paint underneath my fingernails. I didn't shower today, and I have glasses on. I don't know what we're gonna do.
Well, I mean, it implies that a girl needs a makeover to like improve her love life, which is so not true.
Well,
but again, this was the 80s and 90s.
Well, and that's kind of what happens in the very next section of these chapters too, right? Like
exactly.
Feyre is like, I'm going to wear a dress to dinner, and
That's
Alice is
why I
like,
brought it up.
excuse me, you're going to what now?
That's why I brought it up. Nobody was forcing her. Nobody was saying, hey, let's do a makeover. But in her mind, she felt like she had to put on a dress to impress.
Well, that was clearly the expectation when she first showed up to Spring Court, right? Like there were all dresses, and she was like, I'm not going to wear that.
Right.
So she knows that Tamlin wanted her to wear a dress or expected her to wear a dress. So now she's like, well, I guess I got to look good for my man because he bruised my neck, you know?
I will say, the bruising your neck thing aside, it is nice to get dressed up, right, for someone that you're attracted
totally.
to. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I will say, though, that there has been a lot of research around like anthropology and around when a woman is ovulating, they just inherently dress nicer and wear more makeup to try to attract the opposite sex. So maybe she was ovulating. We're gonna blame it on biology,
yes,
and not
let's
her
go with that.
being a dumbass.
Let's go with that.
It's like in Greece, right, where Sandy shows up.
Exactly. That was one of the things.
Oh, is that what you were going to say?
No, that's
Sorry.
fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Sandy shows up to the carnival or whatever in that like sinful, skin tight, whatever outfit.
Oh dear God!
Yeah, right.
with the pink jacket, right?
Right.
Thank God she covered up her tight tank top.
Totally like a pink lady's kind of outfit, which she would never have worn. And as a kid, I loved that movie so much and was like, yay, she did it. She's going to get the guy. And then as an adult, I'm like, wait, why are you guys doing this?
Well, and what sucks
Just
about
be together.
that one too is that he tries to like
Does
make
the same
himself
thing.
like a jock and a quote unquote nerd or whatever, and
A good guy.
Instead of like keeping that on, he rips the Letterman sweater off and is like, okay, fuck that shit, we're
He's
gonna
like,
be nasty together.
Thank God.
Yeah, I know. So like, it's okay. She's changed for me, so it's okay.
Right.
Well,
So-
if you notice in all of these movies, with the exception of Can't Buy Me Love, it is like the jock.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
And to be honest, I mean, I think all three of us can probably say this: the jock was never at the top of my list ever.
Oh, no.
Not one
Give
time.
me the guy that was wearing a little bit of eyeliner, and he probably had a pretty rockin' bod because attraction is attraction, right?
Yeah.
But like, you know, he listened to Rob Zombie and Tool. I'm aging myself here. And
I very much do not relate to these. These characteristics.
I know that Mindy does.
I do. Mine had a skateboard in his hand for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I hung out with the skateboard guys. One of my best friends in high school was one of the skateboard guys. But yeah, like the jock was never the one that really did it for me. Now, if that jock had put on some eyeliner, I mean, woo, I'll tell you what.
The thing about it's funny you say bring up Can't Buy Me Love, because the thing about that one is that's just sort of like a gender bender one. Like it sort of swaps it because she's the popular one and he's the nerdy one, but she does give him a makeover.
Yep.
I forgot.
Yes,
about that.
right? So it's the same
just
kind
like
of
them
thing.
for who they are.
I
y'all.
know, right?
Because you know what? That makeover is only going to last a day.
Mhm.
Yep.
They do it in the Breakfast Club too. Remember
Yep.
when she takes her in and fixes her? So anyway, that's one that just kind of bothers me. But
If you bitches ever try to like make me over, I'm gonna.
you don't need a
Kick
makeover.
you in
You're
the
gorgeous.
stomach.
What are you talking about?
Oh, that was so the right answer. I wasn't even fishing either.
I do love that Alice calls her out. By the way, when she's putting that
Yes.
dress, she's like, "Okay, good. As long as you don't like
Completely
lose your mind." Yeah, I
That
love
made me laugh.
That was funny.
I enjoyed that.
Oh no, I actually wrote down the quote. I see. Good that you aren't losing your common sense entirely.
Yeah, I thought that was really funny.
And then there's the trope that there's some sort of bet going on in these rom-coms. Something like and She's All That, when they make the bet that he can make her prom queen. And Can't Buy Me Love, it's not really a bet, but it's like
It's a deal.
It's a deal where she's going to make him popular.
They're both in on it, but yeah.
And then How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days is the same way. Again, a little bit of a gender bender, and also like a two-way. They're both kind of.
But even if you think about even like Carrie, for example, that's like a bet for prom queen.
True,
right?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that's
is
true.
prom queen still a thing? I mean, my daughter's only in 9th grade, so I don't really know.
It kind of is.
It was when I was.
It kind of is, but I don't feel like it's as big of a
Right,
deal.
what would you bet for someone to be now if it's not prom queen?
Probably like a TikTok influencer.
Right.
Honestly,
I can
like,
yeah.
turn into an
like
influencer
yeah.
go
Addison Rae.
viral. Yeah, like to go viral.
It's like
Okay.
followers and stuff like that. Yeah, I would say is the sort of similar. But
I would be really bad at that.
but for this, I mean, purposes for these books, it's kind of the same thing as the whole curse, like how he has to do his motivation is not like because he loves her outright. It starts with this whole curse and that he's got to, woo her because of this other thing.
I mean, it is a bet, really. Like,
I mean,
between
technically.
Amarantha and like all of Prithian,
Right.
Essentially.
So that was something interesting that I thought kind of tied in. The other one that I found that tends to be a romantic trope, and I really only found it in one of the like rom-coms, so correct me if you all can think of another one. It's the abduction classified as romantic, so like the sort of Stockholm syndrome. And I remember in Overboard, that if you all ever saw that movie,
yeah.
which is another great movie. I love that movie.
That is a good one.
Where he kidnaps her and she doesn't have any memory and turns her into the mom of the family, like basically manipulates her, which is really disgusting.
I think that's called grooming.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
a little bit of that, not so much in the movie versions, but in the book versions of Twilight. There's a little bit of
yeah.
that with
I guess so,
Edward,
yeah.
like, you need to be safe, you have to be here, like you I'm gonna make sure you stay in the house, have a sleepover with Alice kind of
That's
deal,
true, yeah.
Which is not exactly the same thing, but
Yeah.
close.
Edward also borders on the line of being a little too much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm going to watch those
Problematic.
movies again soon, but like,
a problematic king, as the kids these days say.
Yeah. So, and of course, Tamlin is our.
okay, so what about
Abductor.
the Cruel Prince? That's a good abduction one.
The
I mean,
Cruel
she doesn't
Prince.
she doesn't fall in love with
Blood
the
and
dad.
Ash.
Yeah, Blood and
That's
Ash.
true.
That's
Blood
a
and
good
Ash
one.
is a good one.
Well, we've already talked about all these books tonight. The King of Battle and Blood
Yeah.
is an abduction one.
A touch of darkness, sorta.
Yeah, that's kind of
Sorta.
yeah.
Which it's like, I mean, we see it and we love these books.
All
and
those
it's
books are hot.
It is. It's totally hot. But when you break it down, it's like, ew, like that's their kidnapper.
My daughter asked me tonight because I was talking to her about King of Battle and Blood because Scarlet St. Clair is going to be near our city in Kentucky, and she goes, "Is that the lady that writes A Touch of Darkness?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "I can't read those, right?" And I said, "No." And she goes, "Can I read King of Battle and Blood?" And I said, "No."
Absolutely not. Oh my gosh, definitely not A Touch of Darkness.
Well, I definitely think, though, that like Tamlin and, all these other male characters in these books that we're talking about are hotter than Kurt Russell. So I'm just going to go with that.
A little bit.
I like her, Russell.
Really?
Overboard? Yes.
You have a daddy complex.
You do.
Ew. I rebuke that.
Well, I just have one more trope that goes through all these rom-coms, and it's the opposites attract trope, which, is kind of like enemies to lovers, but like
in real life, think of how if I've always said if I was going to be married to someone like me, I'd be on that show Snapped. That used to be on Lifetime, because I have to be with someone a little bit more laid back than I am.
Right.
And we've joked, me and Mindy joke all the time that like my closest friends are all like my husband, because I do like to, be grandiose and be in charge. I'm a little bossy. Thanks for putting up with me, guys.
See, I need that in my life, so that's always good. But this is one of my favorite tropes because I just think it is cool when they complement each other. And so obviously in this, we're talking about Fae human. That's as about as opposite as it gets in these worlds. But you also see it in, of course, Beauty and the Beast and The Breakfast Club when you're talking about, the jock and the weirdo. Yeah. And then the criminal and the popular girl, whatever, end up together. Dirty Dancing is another one, which I hadn't brought up yet, which is another great movie. And then Pretty in Pink, which you've got Rich and Poor. So I don't know. It was just when I was reading these chapters, all the things that came up, the interactions, it felt very rom-com because it was a little lighter. A lot of the conversations were a little lighter. And it just reminded me of watching a really, really good rom-com. So I enjoyed these chapters a lot.
I did too. Well, I was talking about being lighthearted and funny. The very next section that we were just talking about when Feyre shows up in the dress and Lucian's like, I gotta go.
I know he's like, peace out. I got something important to do.
He doesn't even try to come up with a plausible excuse. He just is like, I'm going to leave now. And just walks away.
Doesn't he say something like, I have something very important to do?
He says, I'm late for something incredibly important. Yeah.
I wrote down wingman.
Oh my gosh. It made me laugh.
I cracked up on that. I laughed out loud.
That just was so funny to me. And then, he leaves to give them alone time, and Tamlin and Feyre are kind of flirting with each other, and she's kind of like, are we flirting right now? Are we doing this? And one thing that I really liked, because I think that this was a really good sign of Feyre's healing and kind of moving past some of her trauma a little bit, which she feels pretty, right? And a few chapters before, she says, I've never been lovely a day in my life, right? And she actually feels pretty. And she says she looked at herself in the mirror with the dress. She knows that she looks good and she feels good about that. And she also specifically talks about her eyes and says, they're mine. They're not my mom's. They're not Nesta's.
I highlighted that too.
Yeah, they are the same eyes. They look like her mom's. They look like Nesta's. But she's seeing herself kind of standing on her own, where she's been seeing herself through the lens of that promise that she made to her mom, right? The connection to the family. I've got to make sure they're okay. I've got to take care of them. But she's seeing herself separated, not just physically separated, but emotionally separating as well. And that's really good for her, and that's healthy.
Yeah, I do feel like this is the first time we've seen her have a little bit of self-esteem. It's promising. Yeah.
Well, I think also not worrying about where your next meal is going to come from, feeling at least a little bit safe. I mean, I don't think any of them feel super safe right now, really can help you feel a lot better about who you are. I mean, she's never had time to even put into looking at herself in the mirror before this.
Well, and what would the point be even if she did, right? She's going out and physically working hard to provide food for her family, right? So it's what am I going to go get dressed up and put a bunch of makeup on to go skin a deer?
No.
To her point, she still got laid. I mean,
that's true.
She still had a guy, I guess, kind of. I mean, she was going to be someone's mistress, which is awful, but
she was pretty much okay with that too, I think.
She was. Yeah, because I mean, quite frankly, I think she knew she didn't have time for anything more, and that no one was going to be interested in a family without any money.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, and she treated him like a side piece too. I mean...
Well, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We talk about in a previous episode that he would just walk around the corner and lean against the barn. I'm
just wiggle his eyebrows.
Wow. Real good into that foreplay, aren't you there, Isaac? Which, speaking of which, she does a painting of their hands intertwined. And I'm like, Feyre.
I know. I noticed that as well.
Well, and I love that Tamlin got a little bit jealous over it.
Yeah. I would have been mortified, though. I'd have been like, oops, you weren't supposed to see that.
There is an Instagram artist, and I'll find it before we post this and put it in the show notes, but there's an Instagram artist right now that's doing all of these book talk couples
that's cool,
during coitus with their hands clenched together. There's one with Cassie and Nesta on the headboard. And it's really, really good. I can't remember who it is, and I'm so sorry, but I will put it in the show notes.
Can you text it to us?
Sure can.
when you figure out who it is, for no reason,
right? What day?
For research purposes.
What day is your husband out of town this week?
Yeah, that's every day. Let's just go with that. One thing that I wrote down about Feyre finding her identity outside of her family, I noted that Nesta and Elaine don't really get to do that for a really long time. Much like we talked about, Feyre is getting this time and opportunity to work through her feelings about the Fae, which we talked about before in a previous episode. That helps her when she becomes Fae, and Nesta and Elaine don't get to do that, right? And it's kind of the same kind of deal here, where Feyre is getting the opportunity to stand on her own and find her own identity outside of her family. Nesta doesn't really get to do that until Court of Silver Flames, I think, because even when she has that job in the Night Court, it's still very much connected to her sister because it's the Night Court, right? But when she becomes a Valkyrie and meets Emery and meets Gwen in Silver Flames, like that is her completely standing outside of her family. But Elaine, I don't think
She's
Elaine
not been there yet.
Yeah, Elaine doesn't have any of that outside of her own family yet. I guess when she gets her POV book,
I'm
at
like,
some point.
Sarah J. Maas, just tell us a year.
Well, that's the thing, though. We don't know because she's just been completely separate from everybody. She's in her own world, and so maybe that's how she's working through it.
Peripheral character.
We've talked about this at length, but there is something big that's going to happen
for
with
sure.
her.
I feel
there is
I feel
something
like
that we're all going to look back and be like, oh, that's why she was doing that. I mean, we already know that she can like see things. We already know that she is kind of mentally unstable still.
For sure.
They've just stopped talking about it so much in the books. And I think it would have gotten monotonous if it hadn't, because we're not getting that much closer to her story. But I think the fact that the last book ended with her and Gwen in the last, little bit of it. Well, I guess that was a bonus chapter, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But, I mean, that bonus chapter was there for a reason. I think it's to set up what's about to happen
Something
next.
else.
I'm excited.
Yeah, no, I'm interested to see how Elaine comes into her own, the way that Nesta has, the way that Feyre has,
I hope it takes a couple books, though, because I don't want her to go from being, like, fucking weird, just being like, okay, I'm normal again, I can see shit. Like,
Yeah.
I'd like to see some turmoil there, really, honestly, because... and I don't know if she has a mental illness, and I'm not saying that just because she's psychic, she does, but that's a lot of what they're alluding to, and mental illness you don't start getting treatment and get better that quickly.
It doesn't just disappear.
Right, yeah. So I hope that there's a little bit more of a slow burn on her story as we start to learn more about her.
Yeah, and Feyre, before she takes Tamlin to the gallery, I wrote down this quote. She's kind of like musing about Tamlin, and says, "What grief and burdens did he bear for whoever else had been lost in this conflict, lost to the blight or to the attacks on the borders? High Lord, a position he hadn't wanted or expected, yet he'd been forced to bear its weight as best he could." And she's kind of like thinking about Tamlin. She knows that he's a complicated person, and she's thinking about basically like why he is so complicated. And I wrote down, first of all, I think that she is very accurate with what she's saying. Like, he's weighed down with all this stuff. She doesn't even know like how accurate she is, because she doesn't know about Amarantha yet. She doesn't know about the curse yet. She doesn't know about, he's the loophole that could save everybody. Like, that is weighing down on him. But I also feel like it's an example of Feyre seeing the roses with Tamlin and ignoring the thorns. So like when she was in the garden in a different chapter, she grabs a rose and like ignores the pain that the thorns are causing. Like they're stabbing her in the hand and she just ignores it. And I feel like this section is her ignoring the thorns, right? It's like he just cornered you in the middle of the night in the hallway, bit you, bruised your neck, and now you're like, oh, his life is so hard.
I'm so aching and empty.
Right. And I mean, be attracted, that's fine, but she just completely, like, just like we do as readers the first time you read this book, right? She just completely glosses over like these major red flags that he has shown her.
Also, can I say that, her finding that attractive is fine if it's two consensual adults.
Yes.
And it was not consensual on her end. Like, if that's what you're into, cool. Whatever gets you going, as long as you're in a safe space with someone that keeps you safe. But if someone is obviously scared of you and that's not what that's not what the agreement is, right?
And says, get off me.
Right.
Yeah, get away from me.
Right.
Yeah.
Then it starts becoming an attack. And again, I'm sorry to keep harping on this. Not fucking funny. It's just not funny.
No, it's not. And Lucien. One thing I just saw on my notes that I forgot to say. So Feyre's ignoring the red flags, right? And I wrote down, and this might be a hot take and a controversial opinion, but it's just a question. Is Feyre looking at Tamlin the way that the fandom looks at Rhysand?
Yes.
Okay,
At
good.
this point, yeah.
Well,
For sure.
Ignoring the
way,
red flags and like focusing on the good
Yes.
things.
Yeah, and
Okay,
I mean,
good.
like, and we all are.
You
right
are
now,
correct.
right? Thank you.
That was
Thank
the
you,
right
Whitney.
answer.
I thought it was a rhetorical question. Apparently, it wasn't. But I mean, we've talked about how in Silver Flames, Rhysand does some shit out of love. You know, they're really messed up, right?
Yeah.
And they're not super forgivable.
To multiple people too, right?
Right,
Like
right.
to Nesta and to Feyre.
And can I say too, I'm just gonna jump ahead here to book 5. I really hate that they like, spoiler alert, if one dies, the other dies, because it's essentially a suicide pact, which
Yeah.
is so fucking stupid because you have a High Lord and a High Lady that are going to die at the same time in this kingdom that's like super beloved that they've taken care of for thousands and thousands of years.
Yep.
Like, what the fuck is up with that?
Well, they do the
really-
same thing in Blood and Ash, right?
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
they
But
would
that's-
really
that's- but that was sexier.
But I mean, the end result's the same.
But I do think in Blood and Ash, though, the idea is that she's prolonging Kieran and Castiel's life so they can't die. In this, it's more of like, well, if you die, I'm dead.
It's the opposite. Yeah,
Right.
they
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
didn't think that one through. Like they
Right.
were really just thinking like, okay,
That's so romantic.
each of us have now experienced what it's like to lose you.
Right.
And neither one of us ever want to do that again. So we're just going to not.
That's not healthy.
Without thinking about like there are other people in your lives that affects, right?
Well, and now you have a baby.
Right.
So if you both die, your kid is left without a parent and your court is left without its king.
Yeah.
And maybe that says something about their trust in their inner circle, right? Like maybe that says something about the way they feel about Morrigan and Cassian and all those, because they would totally step up and do a great job.
Can you imagine though if Knox went to them and he's like, so like
Nix.
I'm married? Fuck. It's like you know why it is? I'm going to talk about this in my nerdiest thing. I'm reading The Bonds That Tie right now. It's the series, and one of the guys' name is Knox. But can you imagine him coming home and be like, so I married this girl. If she dies, I die. Like, think about it from like a parental scope.
Right.
And you're
Yeah,
like, what
it's
the
crazy.
hell are you doing?
Why did you do that?
Sorry
Yeah.
about the sidebar. Just
No,
like talking about like really not great behavior in the name of love.
Yeah.
And we do make a lot of excuses for Rhysand because he is the better fit for her.
And Feyre.
And Feyre. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And we'll get to talk about a lot more of this when we get to Under the Mountain, which I'm really excited about because I've never read that section thinking about, okay, let's see, like, is this really okay? Is this
Yeah.
problematic? Like,
It's
I've never...
It is problematic.
Yeah, and I think it's going to bring up a lot of good discussion, so I'm excited about that. So Feyre brings Tamlin to the gallery, and I wrote down, like, I think this is a really pivotal scene for a lot of different reasons.
Yes.
She has been working through her trauma through the painting, right? And she still has a ways to go because she doesn't want to show him the dark stuff, right? Like she's hoping he doesn't notice some of the paintings that she doesn't think fit in the spring
Which,
court.
why didn't she hide them better?
I agree with that because I'm like, if you're worried that he's going to see it, like put it somewhere else.
Where's the pig painting?
Yeah, take it to your room, you know.
Or turn it around or something.
Yeah, but I actually thought that was really good foreshadowing for, you know, her darkness, her trauma doesn't fit the spring court in her mind, like her paintings, much like she herself does not fit. Yeah, like it's not the right place for her, and she just doesn't know that yet. But I also thought it was pivotal, the interaction with her and Tamlin, right? Like Tamlin sees all of her paintings. He notices the ones that she hopes he doesn't notice. And he immediately understands exactly what he's looking at, which I'm like, point for Tamlin,
Yeah.
right? Like he isn't confused by it. He isn't like, what is that? He isn't like, oh, that's really dark and great, good job, but I really like this
like
one with
nice,
the bright colors,
nice trees or whatever. Yeah.
And she's trying to steer him to like, I painted your Glen, and he's like, yeah, I know that's exactly what it is. Like, he sees everything that she's laying out there, and he just gets it, which is nice for her as an artist, for her as a person, to like have somebody see her and understand what she's trying to communicate.
Well,
you know?
can you imagine, and as somebody who does create, what an incredible validation that would be to her. And again, I don't feel like I need people to be like, oh, your art's so beautiful or whatever, but it does feel good when somebody like recognizes it. And that was a lot. Like, think about how hard it was for her to put that out there, because this whole time she's been like, I'm just painting and it's like crap. I can't capture it the way it's supposed to be or whatever. And then she puts these out there, and for somebody to validate that and to understand and to get what she's putting out there is kind of huge.
Yeah, and I think that it adds to her, you know, we've been saying we see her self-confidence growing and growing and growing, and I think this is a really big piece of being more confident as but like the next few chapters, because a few chapters from now, she's going to decide, I'm going to go back to Prithian and I'm going to tell Tamlin how I feel about him. And then she finds out, you know, the real story behind everything that's going on. And she's like, yeah, I can handle this. And it's like the Feyre of a few chapters before this gallery scene wouldn't have had the confidence to do that, you know?
Can we also talk about the level of forgiveness that has to come with him choosing the painting that he does choose, which is her in the woods where she hunted, essentially where she kills the wolf and skins it and leaves its body there, right? The fact that he was okay with taking, I mean, the way that the author describes it, it does sound very, very beautiful. And I've always said, you know, as someone that has a degree in art and practices it all the time, good art evokes a feeling, even if it's a negative feeling, right?
Yeah.
So that piece may not make him feel like ooey gooey inside, like the starlight pool in the Glen, but it does evoke a feeling in him. And I think that's essentially what he's going for. He knows that that's really who she is as a painter. She's not, like you said, she's not going to paint bright colors, and she's not going to, you know, do like expressionism and all this shit. Right. She is going to paint kind of what's in her head. And I think it shows that he has started to move past this, you know, problem that brought them together in choosing that painting.
Yeah, and one of the things that I wrote down too is that I think he sees her as a kindred spirit. He gets the pain, he gets the pressure, he gets the loneliness, he gets the need for sex just for the release. Like she describes how it was with Isaac, the trauma of watching your family be brutalized and not be able to stop it. You know, she painted the painting of her dad having
beating him.
The debt collectors coming and, you know, smashing his leg or whatever. And I thought, this is the first time I made that connection. Like, Tamlin was there when Night Court came and slaughtered his whole family, you know, and he relates to her so much, and he sees how much they are alike and the types of experiences they've had that are so similar in this scene. And I feel like he hasn't really fully understood that up until this point, because now it's like literally laid out in front of him,
right.
You know? And then they move from that to another really sweet scene in the Glen, right? Where they've got the singing willow tree.
Yeah.
Whatever. This was a different Glen than the Starlight one?
Yes, it was a different one.
In my mind, it was always the same one that they just went back to. But I guess it would make sense that he would have more than one. Yeah, in his giant spring court. Well,
he's like, guess
not
what?
Giant, but
there's more than one Glen.
I thought it was the same one.
I mean, what's the true definition of a Glen? Like a glassy knoll?
I still don't
grassy,
even...
not glassy.
I don't even know what a Glen is, honestly. Maybe that should have been our vocabulary.
Maybe. I guess I always just assume it's like a meadow or
that's
like you said, a grassy knoll.
Well, and I think of speaking again of Twilight, their meadow.
Oh
like
yeah.
Glen,
oh yeah, that's
right?
true.
It's all, but I think the word
that
Glen
is what I picture.
Really evokes a feeling of like romanticism and like you know like these beautiful areas of land, and I mean and you know in Scotland like everything's like a glen, like these beautiful pastures with water and all of these things. So I think, you know, if she was like It was a grassy area with wildflowers. It's not the same.
It's not the same. Yeah.
Good on you, SJM.
Yeah. Bravo. Golf claps for you.
I'm going to give you a real clap.
I think you're going to have a good career.
Get that next book out.
She has a bright future.
Yeah, bright future. Yeah, but I feel like we only get a couple of scenes in these glens with Tamlin, but I feel like those that scenery brings out the best in him. Mm-hmm. He seems more at peace in those scenes than he does any other time. He seems happier. He's vulnerable. He's like a normal person flirting with a girl he thinks is cute.
Those were the places he went as a child to feel happy. Yeah. So I think he feels more relaxed. He's trying to share something with her that feels very important to him, right? And she reacts positively, so then it becomes a thing where it's the two of them together in this place that he already loves.
Yeah.
So again, you kind of love him right now.
Well, and she falls asleep, and he's
Did
like,
he put her to sleep?
I wrote down question marks about that because I was like, is it the willow singing?
I feel like
it's the magic,
the willow, because he doesn't get mad, but he's like, shit, Feyre, like, damn it, you weren't supposed to fall asleep.
I know.
It
says specifically that he says like a curse word.
Yeah.
And I was like, why? I was really confused.
It was kind of weird, but like that's how I took it. That he was like, damn it, we were gonna get it on or whatever.
Are we about to get into the part of Sarah J. Maas's books where everything is a filthy gesture?
She's falling asleep and she hears him say, "You're exactly like I dreamed you would be."
Yeah.
And I wrote down like, I mean, come on. That's really sweet.
It is really sweet.
It's really sweet. That's what I mean. Like that scenery brings out the best in him.
What's interesting about that line though is like, was he having dreams about who he was going to end up breaking this curse with? Or like where'd that come from?
That's a good question.
Like because he wasn't, for someone to say you're exactly as I dreamed you'd be, because in the beginning he was like, you're not at all like what I thought you'd be like.
I think that I think that when he says you're exactly like I dreamed you would be, I think that he is referring to like when he pictures his mate, when he pictures the person he's going to spend forever with, it's somebody like Feyre.
Okay.
And
that makes more sense.
And when he says like, you're not at all what I thought you were earlier, it's as a human.
Right.
I think.
But we know also that this truly is not the real Feyre.
Right.
So, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, how he really wanted someone more of like the Victorian era, right? Meek, quiet, covered up, isn't a fighter, does what her man says type of thing. And right now she is that person.
Right.
Because she isn't really in a world that she's used to or has any control over. And once she becomes more comfortable with her surroundings in later books, then the real Feyre comes out.
And she's just now coming into her own. Like she's literally, this is the first time she has self-esteem. So like we don't even know yet. I mean, we do because we've read ahead, but we don't know from this book, who she truly is when she's 100% herself.
But there's a stark contrast between the girl that shot a wolf and a deer, dragged a carcass and a deer back, and the girl that is wearing a dress to dinner and then laying in a field during the day.
Well, and at the same time, this isn't the real Tamlin either.
That's true.
Right? Like, because he is so focused on the curse, and he's also hindered by the loss of his magic and the loss of his court, really. Like, this is not normal Tamlin at all. And when we meet normal Tamlin in book 2, it's like, ooh.
He's a bitch. He really is. He complains about being High Lord, and then he's like, gonna go drink with these guys over here. And if that person can't pay rent, sorry, you don't get to eat. Like, he is a completely different person.
You know what I'm just thinking about? We've talked about this before on the podcast, I'm pretty sure, about the theory that one of us saw on TikTok or something, that maybe Amarantha was Tamlin's actual mate. Mm-hmm. So if that theory were accurate, wouldn't that explain why he is so horrible in book 2? Because his mate died.
That's a really,
you know what I mean?
Really
because when Rhys talks to Feyre about like the mating bond, when they're talking about Elaine and Lucien, and Feyre's like, does she have to be with Lucien if she doesn't want to be? And he's like, well, no, but she'd have to deal with it. There's always going to be that bond there. He's going to have to deal with it. Some males go literally insane, and I'm like,
Do you? So I know that, everybody calls Rhysand Amarantha's whore. Are you supposed to think that Tamlin and Amarantha are also fucking under the mountain? Like, why wouldn't she? If that's who she wanted and she won, why wouldn't she?
I don't know.
I think he's so terrified of her.
But see, I think she wants him
to be willing
and to want
I'd
her.
rather Rhysand be willing. I mean, you know what I mean?
But
like,
Rhysand's acting like almost like
true.
he
She
is.
thinks-
She thinks he is willing.
yeah, she thinks he's evil and is coming to her bed because
Right.
he wants to and all of that. Yeah. That's a good point.
That's interesting. I'm going to have to think about all this.
I do
Bonus
want to
episode.
throw out there, because we were talking about Tamlin and being focused on the curse. Something that struck me, I think it was when they were in the gallery, and I think it's when they're in the gallery, and she offers, like, what can I do to help? Or maybe it's when they're in the Glen. And he says something like, I just want to keep you safe. You can't really help me. It's my burden to bear, kind of blah, 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 that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Is he, is he already deciding that he's not going to use her?
I feel like he is.
Yeah. Like, I feel like this is the very beginning of that, him realizing maybe I'm not going to do this. Because then eventually he
We're only a couple of chapters away from him
Yeah.
being like, you gotta go.
yeah.
Let's fuck first, but you gotta go.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I felt like that was very indicative of him sort of deciding that. I thought it was an interesting little foreshadowing.
That's a good point. That's true. I didn't think about that. I was looking to see if I wrote anything down about that line, and I didn't, which I'm disappointed in myself that I didn't mark that.
I'm more disappointed in that I didn't read the next chapter. But
That's
this
true.
is my third read, so I'm sure I can.
I think you'll be able to
Yeah.
hang.
I'm no Whitney, but I do remember it some.
So then, the next day, Feyre wakes up and realizes like pretty much everything is very different in Springport.
Oh, wait, let's talk though first about this when he unglamours her in the Glen.
Oh, that's right.
I mean, that's like borderline prostitution, guys. He's like, I'll show you everything, but for a kiss.
Well, and then he fucking kisses her eyelids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I didn't have a problem with the I'll do it for a kiss. I had a problem with the kissing her eyelids.
Well, but after that, he still expected a kiss. After that, and then she falls asleep. That's why he's like, shit, Feyre.
Yeah. Well, he's
I was
like,
gonna
you're
fucking
not
kiss
what
you.
I dreamt of. God.
That makes sense. That's why he was like, because I was like, why is he upset that she's falling asleep? Because he wanted to make out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Gotcha.
if it was good making out, she would have woken up Tamlin. Maybe next time.
Maybe next time don't lead with the eyelids.
Right. Maybe she's like, well, this is not going anywhere and I'm kind of tired. So see ya, I'm out.
One thing I did note about that later, I guess that night at dinner or whatever, Lucien makes a joke about it. Like, he obviously knows what happened. And Tamlin says, don't be an ass. And I said, Lucien's been that way the whole time, my dude. That's what I wrote down. I said, is this just to hide the fact that you're telling Lucien everything? Like, I imagined Tamlin you're not supposed to let her know that I'm telling you everything, because I need you to keep telling me what to do, because I have no idea what I'm
have the
doing.
microphone in my ear.
Yeah,
But
that made me laugh a little
How
bit.
much does it stink for Feyre that she doesn't have anyone to go back
She
to?
has-
I know. She has no one.
She can confide in Alice, I guess, but why would she?
But
I don't
You know
think
what I
she
mean?
trusts Alice.
Yeah, I think
what I
completely.
mean.
Alice
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
kind of treats her like she's stupid.
Oh, well, I think Alice thinks
100%.
that she's stupid. I think so. Alice is the one that tells Feyre all about Amarantha, and as she's telling her, here's what's really been going on, she almost literally says, you are so dumb. How did you not figure all of this out? All you had to do was this one simple freaking thing.
We didn't have it figured out as the viewer.
Oh, no, I know. But
you know
I'm
what I
saying
mean?
that's Alice's perspective.
right.
Alice does think that she's a stupid human, because she's like, how have you not figured any of this
Well,
out
and
yet?
did none of the other fairies know that Feyre was glamoured? Because when she wakes up the next morning and Alice is like, it's Alice, you dumb fuck.
I
what
know.
are you talking about?
I thought that same thing, because I just assumed that at least Alice knew
Well,
that
maybe
she was glamoured.
didn't. Maybe she didn't realize she was not glamoured anymore.
But also,
Maybe.
if no one realized she was glamoured, did they smile at her and she's literally looking through them?
And they're like, she's a bitch.
I picture him looking at her like, ooh, pick your nose, making, and they're like,
we
oh
talked
shit,
about
she can
that.
see us.
I don't know. That I kind of assumed that everybody knew that she was glamoured, but you're right. That doesn't make sense for Alice to be
Right.
like, it's me.
Again,
Duh.
I want to point out, and I know I've said this several times, how often do you go around the corner and fart because no one's there?
I know.
And you're like, oh my God, that smelled so bad. Thank God no one was over here. And then like the gardener fairy's standing there and he's like, what the fuck, Feyre? What did you eat? Did you guys have lamb at dinner again?
Yeah, it's
Tell me
that
what's
Faye
up.
food.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's really funny. The only thing that I really thought about with that whole section about the glamour is like, I do not understand why Tamlin didn't at least mention to her, hey, I've been glamoring you for this purpose, for this reason, and I'm going to not do that anymore. So things are going to be like really weird looking, and I don't want you to be freaked out. Because I'm like, if the point of you glamoring everything in the first place was so that she wouldn't freak out, why would you not give her a heads up?
But when she could see them all
Because
again.
she's going to
Yeah.
freak out. Because people just appear as if from nowhere. Like, I didn't understand that.
Two things stuck out for me on this glamoring section. First of all, was Lucien not glamored all
Lucien
along?
doesn't give a fuck. So I wonder if he was just like, I'm not glamoring.
Well, that's what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
I
Like,
think he
I
just didn't
think,
care.
like, that's kind of what I wrote. It was like, it was just interesting. So was he just Lucien to Feyre, or, you know, like he never was
Tamlin.
glamour to begin with?
Tamlin's not really glamored so much as he's putting a damper on his high lordship, right?
That's true.
Because Rhysand talks about doing the same thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
he doesn't show his full power or whatever.
What makes you look like you have full power? Because I didn't understand that either. Like, are you just shinier?
I don't understand
Yeah,
it
I
at
don't
all.
either.
Do you shimmer in the sunlight?
I mean, maybe it's just like an aura, or like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a feeling
Maybe
rather
it's
than something you see.
BDE.
And I mean, I feel like it kind of is, because the first kind of mention that I can think of that is Rhys in Mist and Fury when they're in the Court of Nightmares and he's, you know, having Feyre like pretend to be his whore basically, and she's like, you know, I could hear him walking down the hallway or whatever, and it was like she says he had lifted the glamour and you could see like his full power, and I'm like, I don't know what that means other than like
Well,
BD.
It's a panty dropper.
Yeah, I mean, really, like, I think that maybe that really is what it is.
Tamlin does say, and this is a quote, it comes with physical markers too. This about being this is when he's talking about he actually was destined to be High Lord, which we had discussed in a previous podcast that we weren't sure, but he definitely was. But it says it comes with physical markers too. It's why I couldn't hide what I was becoming from my brothers, from anyone. It's still easier to blend
So
in.
it's more of like a destiny, fate type of thing that you're going to be the High Lord, even if you're not in line to be the High Lord.
Well, and I think the same thing is kind of true of just power in general, because Moore in Mist and Fury talks about like, I had way more power than anyone in my family, but they knew it. Like, everybody could tell. I don't know.
Are we ever told what these markers are?
I don't think
we actually are, but it's just
I can't
interesting that
think
he
of
brought it up.
any.
That could be kind of exciting to learn about
Yeah.
later. It might change a lot of digital representation too.
Yeah,
True.
that's true. That would be
I mean,
really
we already
interesting.
know that Sarah J. Maas has a thing for tattoos, right?
Yes.
Like, and I'm totally here for it. Right? But I mean, all of her main men that
All of them,
like,
yeah.
have tattoos: Rowan, Rune,
Yeah.
Hunt, Rhysand. Do Cassian and Azrael have any?
I think they do have some, just not as many. Yeah, I think they would have
Feyre
to.
has some
Because they talk about that's like an Illyrian, like, good luck, wish for glory before you go into battle.
that's
kind
what
of
I'm gonna
thing.
blame all my tattoos.
I
on.
could
It's for
totally
good luck.
be making this up, but don't they all have the mountain tattoos? Okay,
on their
or is it
knees?
just or is it just Rhys?
I don't think they all do.
Okay, I was for some reason I was thinking that was something they did together after their
I will say,
ordeal.
I
could
always
totally be making that up.
I always thought that mountain tattoo thing was kind of corny until I saw Mad Schofield drawing
Yes.
of Rhysand and Amarantha's bed and
Yeah.
the tattoos on his knees, and I was like, okay, now I get
I
it.
get it. Yeah.
Right, because I was just
I thought the same
picturing
thing.
like some like 19-year-old scrawl on someone's knees of like a shaky hand.
I
you
designed
know?
it myself.
Well, I mean, do you know of anyone that has cool tattoos right above their knees? I don't, but she does a really good job of making them look great.
Yeah.
My brother has a lot of tattoos, so I'm just going to not say
Above
anything.
his knees?
He does on his calves.
I've not seen your brother in a long time, so I mean, I wouldn't know.
Really quick, my last thing that I had to say about the glamours. So one thing I thought of, that seems like a huge draw on power to glamour your entire court, right? So how, like, if he's so, like, he must be like super duper super powerful for like him have less power and like to be able to do all this shit. And I know it drains him when he does other stuff, but
I keep going.
I know Deborah really has something to say.
So I started doing research into like senses today and like high Fae senses because I wanted to talk more about that. And honestly, skipped it because I didn't find anything out that we didn't already know, right? But one of the articles I found talks about how much magic it takes to do these different things that fairies can do that humans don't, and glamoring takes very little magic.
Okay, well that makes more sense then.
I'm so glad I read that.
I am glad you read that because it was
That's
really stressing me out. I was like, how is he doing that and still being able to like...
Now, I will say hiding a bunch of other people, I would assume takes a lot of power. But if he's High Lord, he has
has a lot of
way
power.
more
Yeah,
power.
but it just made me realize like how much... Like it just definitely put it in perspective for me how much power he had to originally have to be able to do all that and like turn lights on and take tables away and heal himself.
Yeah.
Well,
you know,
she talk about how like you can tell his power is starting to diminish though, and maybe that's why the glamour goes away. I didn't think about that.
Because it drains him.
She talks about how when they go into the gallery, he has trouble turning all the
Yeah.
lights
lights.
on. So maybe the glamour goes away.
And she asks him if it taxes him when he takes the table away, and she says, "Does that tax you?" So maybe,
and he said it used to not.
Yeah.
It does
Yeah,
now. So
but
I
it does
wonder
now, yeah.
if he gets closer to the end of the curse. If
he's like, I need to get,
his battery's dying.
yeah.
I wonder if Amarantha let him keep more of his High Lord power than she did the other High Lords under the mountain, since he was not under the mountain. And because she's trying to like seduce him too, right?
Right. She's like, I'll let you keep your power, but you
At
gotta
least a little bit.
Yeah.
right, and give me a little bit, just the tip.
Ew. So then the last section of the chapters really is the head and the garden. So basically, Feyre goes outside and finds somebody's decapitated head, and it seems like it was pretty recent, and so she freaks out. And then Tamlin and Lucien come out, and they're basically like, well, this was definitely the Night Court. They find the Night Court insignia on, like, behind the guy's ear or something.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, that's definitely what it was, or who it
Are you
was.
supposed to think he was from the Night Court or he was murdered by the Night Court?
That was one of the things I wasn't
Yeah.
sure of.
Because
so
I don't see Rhysand letting one of his own die.
Well, okay. So I tried to do a little bit of research about this. So obviously, Tamlin and Lucien assume that Rhysand is the one who did this and left it there. And they say, you know, he's horrible. He would think this is funny. Like, this is the kind of thing that he does. Like, this is a taunt, like, to send a message to us, right? And so I'm like, okay, so what's up with this? We don't ever find out, as far as I could find, we don't ever find out exactly who this is. I looked at Mist and Fury in that chapter 54 section where Rhysand is telling his whole like story. And he does not really mention this at all. He does not explain this to Feyre, except under the mountain. Later in this book, he says, Amarantha sent me. Amarantha made me put that head there. Like,
That doesn't mean he killed him.
right. And so, but it also doesn't tell us anything about who this person is. So I don't know if it truly was like somebody from the Court of Nightmares, because they're the only ones that he let come with him to that under the mountain. I don't know if it's somebody else that they branded Night Court to blame him, because Amarantha did stuff. We know by finding out in later books, she did do some things in very specific ways to kind of like frame Rhysand and make people in other courts think that he was doing these things.
So here's my question, you know, and it made me think of this when we're talking about we don't know if that person was from the Night Court or murdered by the Night Court. So it's no secret that there's an inner circle, right? Rhysand, Cassian, Azrael Moore, Amren. And they had been this inner circle for years, and Rhysand hides them in Valaris. So how over 50 years is Amarantha not losing her shit going, where are your people?
I don't think that she knows. I don't think anybody knows who they are outside of.
But it talks about
Night
them
Court.
being in war camp together and that they fought in battle together. Like, it's not like
Rhysand and Cassian and Azrael.
Yeah, it's not like they hid before this 50-year thing. So they were people that were a part of his court.
There are people that are a part of his court, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people know that they are his like right hand guys.
Right,
You know
but
what
I
mean?
thought everyone from the courts was under the mountain.
No.
Oh.
So
See, I'm learning so much.
So, the only people that are under the mountain from Night Court are Rhysand and people from the Court of Nightmares.
So how did I guess Amarantha choose who had to go under the mountain? Because you still have all these Spring Court fairies too that
didn't
have
go.
to go.
She didn't really choose, I don't think. So what happened was she threw a party and invited all the High Lords to come. So the High Lords came to this party and brought like their entourages or whatever with them.
So the three of us that would have been like, I'm real tired. We would have not had to go under the mountain.
yeah,
No,
well,
we would have been in bed already.
Reading wins again.
I guess if a High Lord was like, I don't want to do that, she would have probably, after the fact, like, taken them, sent
Right.
somebody like
But
to
a High
kidnap
Lord
them.
also, because I know that was kind of like the neutral place, right?
Right.
Like I highly doubt a High Lord would have turned down an invitation. But
Right.
like,
and it was supposed to be a show of good faith, like,
Right.
and it was their neutral location, and they considered it a sacred place, so they all trusted that it was going to be on the up and up. But Rhysand tells Feyre, I was going to kill her. I was going to kill Amarantha at this party because I hated her so much for all these things that had happened. And I didn't want any of my actual inner circle to be there. So I didn't let Cassian come. I didn't let Azriel come. I didn't have any of them come. I just brought people from the Court of Nightmares because those were the people I was comfortable with seeing me be the evil High Lord everybody thinks
Well,
I
he
am.
probably also considered them more expendable too.
Right.
the only way I can fathom that you know all these things is that you and Sarah J. Maas are friends.
Only in my mind.
Every time we post a new episode, I'm like, how in the hell did you remember that?
Yeah.
Like you say it, and I'm like, oh, yeah.
I don't know. I really don't know why I remember all these things. It's kind of weird. Sometimes I
you'll be
worry
like,
about it.
and you'll be like, oh, I went and I looked that up, and I'm like, I don't even know what book it's in. How are you finding this shit?
I don't know.
You know what, though? We love you for it.
Yes.
Well,
Because without you, we'd be asking these questions and like,
And have no
we'd
answer.
have 20-minute
I don't
podcast
know.
episodes because we'd be like, we should find out someone that knows that. Invite them to join us on the podcast.
well, but I know
Apparently, I'm a hick when I don't know things.
I think that Rhysand kept his inner circle a secret, like from pretty much everybody, because in book 3, when they finally like talk to Jurian one-on-one, he says like, I always wondered like who your people were. Amarantha always wondered who was the closest to you, and it drove her crazy to not be able to figure it out. And it's like, it's these guys right here, you know? And I don't know if that means that Jurian didn't know truly because he fought in the war with them, right? So I feel like Jurian knew, but just was not in a place to obviously tell Amarantha because he was an eye. He was one
I was going to
eyeball.
say, don't think he could
But he
communicate
says-
with anybody.
Yeah, he says very clearly, like, she did not know who your closest allies were.
Well, and I'll be honest, I'm excited to read those chapters again from a very watchful eye, like we're doing. No pun intended. Sorry, Jurian. But because like the whole Jurian thing and like what happens there has always been a little bit mind boggling to me. So I look forward to doing a deeper dive with that.
Yeah.
Because having an eyeball in a ring, when you really think about it, or when you see it illustrated by an artist, is terrifying.
Yeah, it's
and this eyeball
crazy.
moves. It's
Yeah.
not like it's stationary. It is an alive element.
I
on
think
her
about
hand.
like Moody,
Mad-Eye Moody.
Yeah,
I do too.
with like
Yeah,
the magical
I do too.
eye, like
Yeah.
rolling around all the everywhere.
Right. But can you imagine that like on someone's hand?
No, that's
And what if you say, what if I said the F word and the eye just goes, zzz, and it just stares at me?
like I heard that.
Yeah, you're supposed to say dumb dumb, you idiot.
Yeah, no, that's just crazy. One thing that I wanted to make sure and point out about this section where they're talking about Night Court, I don't think they actually ever say Rhysand's name, do they? I think they just say Night Court and the High Lord of Night Court. But I was just thinking, it is so smart. So the last section, she meets Rhysand. She doesn't know who he is. She doesn't know what his name is. She has no idea that he's High Lord. She doesn't know he's from Night Court. She just knows he's not from Spring Court and that he's like super hot, right? And I really like the writing choice to have him completely disappear from the book for a few chapters and then show back up, because it really adds to him being intimidating. And when when Feyre realizes this is the same guy that she thinks like beheaded a dude, it's so much more impactful because he disappeared for her to hear all this stuff that we, as you know, not first time readers, we know that this really isn't accurate about who he is. But Feyre is terrified of him. And I just thought that was so smart. Because as a not first time reader, I'm like, where did he go? Bring him back. Like,
well, she was fucking him probably, unfortunately. So not Feyre.
Sarah J. Maas.
I hope she is. I mean, if he's real, girl, I hope you are getting it. So speaking of a writing implement, I wanted to point out that at the end of this chapter, and you're right, she never does say Rhysand's name. She remembers that the Suriel tells her, stay with the High Lord, human, you will be safe, which is setting up like we're assuming the wrong High Lord. Yeah. Right? Because she does have to stick with Rhysand under the mountain to survive. It's not Tamlin that brings her out of it. Right? It's Rhysand every single step of the way. And so I love that she, again, as the reader, how were you not like, why does she keep bringing that up?
Right.
Yeah. Why does she? And I think at the time you're like, okay, she's in the right place. She's going to be safe. Yes, that guy does not have a head attached to his body, but everything's going to be fine. Yeah. Right? And I think it's supposed to draw you in further into kind of falling in love in the way that she does with Tamlin. And we can talk about this later, but her being as young as she is and, you know, living in the small village with very little like opportunities for a partner. I mean, I think she thinks she loves Tamlin at a certain point. I don't think she does. I mean, I think, you know, there's a high infatuation. He was Mr. Right now.
Exactly.
Not Mr. Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I think that she feels for him what she thinks love actually is, because she hasn't had an example.
She hasn't actually felt it yet.
I mean, she doesn't even get it from her family.
Right. Like, and she says that her mom loved her dad, but we don't have any idea like what that relationship really looked like. And if Feyre got to even see it, because she talks so much about how her mom was absent, right? Like, so even if her parents had a normal, healthy, loving relationship, Feyre didn't really get to see that.
But I'm not sure that they do, because you don't hear Feyre talk about that later in the books. She only says that early in the books, right? Like, my mom really loved my dad. Does she say that after she kind of gets this inner circle and has people that really trust and love her?
I don't know if she really talks about her mom at all.
Right.
Yeah. Positive or negative.
I mean, she continuously talks about how this woman was political and almost like a poison to Nesta and like trying to, you know, she taught these two other girls how to read and write, but like nothing beyond that, because you are to find a husband and it's supposed to be for gain.
And that's it.
And, you know, at the time, Feyre's dad was wealthy. And so the mom coming to him was a gain.
Right.
Right. But at the same time, what did she have after he lost that? Which was nothing. She got sick and died.
I was going to say, I think she was already passed away before that.
Oh, before they lost.
Yeah, I think she died before they lost their fortune.
I think to your point is that there was never a true example of what a healthy relationship was supposed to look like.
Yeah, she knows it's not what she has with Isaac, right?
Right.
And what she has with Tamlin is definitely better than what she has with Isaac. And so for her, it's like, well, this must be it then. Yeah. Because this is way better, you know, and it is.
Well, and there is something about never having been secure and suddenly being safe. Yeah. Safe-ish.
Yeah.
More safe than she was, maybe.
And it's like we talked about a few episodes back of, you know, Feyre and Tamlin both give each other the opportunity to just like enjoy life, period. Right. Like to paint, to enjoy painting, to spend time together, to go have a picnic in the grass and look at the weird starlight pool or whatever. Like they let each other do that when they've not been able to do that. So, I mean, of course they're going to have a lot of affection for each other, because that's really important for both of them in this really like dark period of their lives. But one thing, at the very end of the chapters, Tamlin is really, really upset. And she basically says to him, like, you never made me feel like a prisoner. Like, you're doing a great job.
Highlighted that too.
Yeah, and I was like, that is very much not accurate. Like, very much not accurate.
Right.
I've tried to, I mean, I didn't want to reread the whole, first 22 chapters again.
Liar, you did want to.
Well, I just didn't have time. But I'm like, what I wrote down was, I wrote that quote, you never made me feel like a prisoner. And I said, didn't he though? Oh, how the turntables.
Well, and I wrote, you never made me feel like a prisoner. And then I put yet.
Well,
Because we know that he definitely does later, but even up until this point, dude, you magicked her on a horse. Like, come on.
Well, that's what I went back in chapter 5. She says, he is my prison or my salvation.
Yeah.
I can't decide which one. And then she calls him my captor or my savior, whatever he was. And I said, she's changing her mind about the situation as she gets to know him and as he doesn't hurt her. Right. But she absolutely felt imprisoned. She absolutely believed that she was being held captive for quite a while. So she wants to make him feel better, but she's telling him something that is not true. It may be not true anymore, but she did feel like a prisoner. And I'm just like, what are you talking about?
Don't you find it interesting that later Lucien tells Feyre that she's his salvation?
I know.
Go back into that because he was imprisoned, right? Like literally.
He knows exactly what that feels like.
Yeah.
Right. And so for him to have that safety, even though, he's essentially in charge of everyone else's safety, but he feels safe with someone finally, right?
Yeah.
And her saying she doesn't know if she's captivated or if he's her captor or salvation, she is saying I still don't really feel safe with this guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and she's trying to escape. She believes that she has to run away and escape to be free. Okay, that sounds like imprisoned.
Yeah.
Ironically enough, she could have, I don't think she would have survived, but if she had figured out a way to run away and just skip continents, she would have been safe. None of this would have ever happened, but then she wouldn't have met Lucien and we wouldn't have more books. So
it was fate.
It was.
It was fate. But yeah, it really bothered me that she's ignoring what
she's ignoring
true.
a thorn.
Yes, she's ignoring what was true to make him feel better.
Yeah.
And she does that at the beginning of Mist and Fury, when he is like, let's just get back to normal and let's get this all settled. And she's like, I'm dying. I'm dying. And he's like, it's fine. She's like, okay, I guess. It's the same kind of thing of be honest. But he has to be capable of listening to that too, which
that's a whole other story.
That's a whole other podcast episode, I feel like. Was there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about?
No, that was great. Thanks for covering the 3rd chapter for me.
You're welcome.
Sorry.
Was it all starting to come back to you?
It was. I was kind of glancing through it while we were talking and I was like, oh yeah, okay. But I am going to still reread it because again, I'm captivated again by this.
I know. And we're so close to Under the Mountain. Although I have to say, I'm really excited to read the section when she goes back home for a little bit. Because I don't remember very much about that at all. So I'm excited to see the family dynamics.
Yeah.
As a reader who has read all of the books, right? With all the knowledge of the family and what's going to happen later, I'm excited to go back.
Well, and all the stuff that we've already picked apart about them too.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the only reason I'm impatient. And when I ended reading this week, when I didn't realize we had another chapter, I wrote in the margins, "Dear God, when are you guys going to do it?"
I think it's in the next section.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
I was going to say, because I know they do.
I'm quite antsy.
And then the next day is when Reese shows up and is like, get out of here,
Right.
Although that's not quite what he says, but anyway. So let's do our nerdiest thing of the week. Who wants to go first?
You should go first.
Me?
Whit.
Okay. Well, I got to read text messages. So my sister, once again, shout out to Catherine. She, I recommended to her the Touch of Darkness trilogy.
We talked about how he calls her darling.
Well,
and
so we were talking about books back and forth, right? And so she was telling me about this book that she read that was really good. She says she was like, it's not fiction, it's not fantasy, but it's really good. Do you want to try it? And I said, if it's not morally gray, Faye, 500-year-old man, I don't know if I can take it.
Have you seen that meme going around where it's 19-year-old and 40-year-old man and she's scowling, and then it's 19-year-old and 500-year-old
if it's
supernatural creature.
A 400-year age gap is fine.
Yes.
A 30-year age gap is weird. But yeah, she texted me last night and said, I finished Touch of Darkness. I went to the bookstore, bought the other 2 books. I guess I won't sleep tonight.
Yeah, when does that next book come out?
I don't know.
March, I think, February or March, which I'm pretty excited about, which I think it's the last book in that series, which I'm super bummed about. But having said that, Scarlett St. Clair is working on some other
stuff.
really wonderful things. So
Yeah. So that's probably my nerdiest thing is just that text exchange of like, I'm sorry, I've got to read the Fae. I've got, I need more than.
So I joined a book club that Mindy has been in for years. And I was in it for 3 or 4 years. And I guess technically I still am. And I joined it because I was like, I need to read different types of things and listen to different points of view that aren't like mine, broaden my mind. And all that would happen is I just wouldn't read the shit I didn't want to read. That's all that happened. Right. But I did read some stuff I would have never picked up, which I really, really enjoyed. But, then at the same time, I'd be like, man, I've not read anything. And then I'd be like, that's okay. I'm just going to go read the thing I want to read now. Because I am a mood reader.
Yeah,
me too.
So, can I tell you my nerdiest things talking about reading?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I got sick this week and got a little bit of a stomach bug from my kids. Now that masks are off, like all the bugs are back, right? Mm-hmm. So, I last week had read the first The Bonds That Tie book by Jay Bree. There's not as much world building as these books or even like Jennifer Armentrout's books, but they're just like good fun. Everybody's snarky. There's a good plot. Like they're pretty quick reads. So when I got sick the other day, I started the second book and read it in 12 hours. And I don't think I've done that in like 10 or 15 years of sitting down and reading a book like that. I've got 2 like kind of timely books on my TBR, and because I've already started the third one, I can't. And there's these books that like I kind of have a timeline on, and I'm like, well, there's 6 books in this series, so how fast can I read them so I can get to this other book? But they're really, really, really good. So it's the Bonds That Tie series. And then our cocktail tonight is the espresso martini. Since Feyre can't seem to stay awake at the Glen, I guess the kissing of the eyes put her to sleep. It would have me too.
Maybe barf.
I know. Right? We will put the recipe on Instagram. It should actually be on there already as of yesterday.
I would like to say the cocktail did not make me barf. It was delicious.
It is so delicious. So yeah, we will have that posted actually, and it was quite delicious.
It was good.
Yeah.
What about you, Mindy?
So I had a couple of nerdy things this week, actually. First of all, I think I might have. Did you get that Bonds That Tie off of Kindle Unlimited?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure I just downloaded it because I just now joined Kindle Unlimited, and
woohoo!
I know, right? And I don't know when I'm going to read all these books, but I definitely downloaded like 6 of them.
So here's what I'll tell you, Mindy, that I figured out. If I read 1 book a month off of there, it pays for itself.
Right.
So, I mean, I think I'm on like my 4th or 5th book off there in the last month because they're really, really good books. And it's a way for other authors to get out there that may not be able to get like a huge book deal, right?
No, I'm really excited about it.
And I will say that first book in the series, you're like, okay, that was kind of fun. And then you get into the second one and you're like, okay, no, I'm in. I mean, much like most series.
I was going to say that happens a lot anyways. But as long as, I mean, honestly, most of the stuff I read is because you or Whitney or somebody
because
recommended it to me.
Your most nerdy friends.
Because I'm always the last one.
Which makes us sound like we have no life. And I swear, the 3 of us and our friends, Abby and Holly, we do more than the typical person.
Oh, yeah.
Even though we act like we're so nerdy. And
all we do is sit home and read.
Well, and we are.
I mean, we are. But like, I'm always listening to something, right?
Yeah.
And like, you're reading late into the night, Mindy.
Yeah.
And like,
Me
Whitney,
too,
you're
yeah.
reading like late at night, but also like when the kids are at school. And so
Yeah.
like, we kind of like all find our own way. And I think that's important, right? We kind of found our way to keep ourselves happy, but still do the things we want to do.
Well, that was something that I hadn't thought of as my nerdy thing, but when you started talking about it, I was like, oh yeah, I totally did that. My other thing is similar to your reading a book in under 12 hours. I love to do jigsaw puzzles, and I hadn't done one probably since the pandemic. I mean, like I used to do them all the time, and then I don't know, life got in the way, and my dining room table was disgusting and like piled with papers and stuff, and I got so pissed off about it that I cleaned the table, and I'm like, I'm gonna do a fucking puzzle. So I sit down to do this puzzle, and I stayed up till 2:00 in the morning. I finished it in less than 12 hours. It's 1,000.
What was it of?
1,000-piece puzzle, and it was actually one that I borrowed from our friend Holly. It's like a bunch of cassette tapes like laid out. It's really cute.
Shout out to Holly.
Yeah. Woo woo, Holly. But it was so fun. I mean, I just couldn't stop doing it. I think I took one break. I literally like did half of it, and then I took a break, and then I sat down and finished it through the night.
I'm kind of jealous.
It was super fun.
I love puzzles.
I know, they're fun. And then my last one is that when I get into new bands, I listen to them on repeat. So I've got like these 3 bands, and that's all I've listened to for the past week.
And they are?
They are. So the 502s, which is super, super duper fun, upbeat music. If you want to be happy, put this music on. And then the second one is Happy Landing, which is a band that I saw when I saw the 502s. They opened for them, and they're also very like fun and upbeat. And then my newest one that I've listened to all day today is called The Blood Arm, and they're more of like a poppy rock, I guess. I don't know.
Do any of them wear eyeliner?
No. Maybe The Blood Arm.
mind.
I haven't seen any pictures of The Blood Arm. I didn't go look at pictures, but yeah, no, but
That sounds like an eyeliner group.
it does sound a little
Like,
bit
yeah.
like an eyeliner
Yeah,
group.
it does.
It totally sounds like something Brian, our podcast editor,
/ person
producer-
that sleeps with Deborah.
yeah.
Person.
Oh, it seems like something he would like. So I don't know, but I haven't talked to him about
He
it.
is your husband.
And he gets to sleep
When
with
you say
Yeah.
person that sleeps with Deborah sounds like tawdry.
but not all husbands get to sleep with their wives.
Well, that's true.
So
that
I will
is
say,
true.
you know,
Touche.
person that sleeps with Deborah.
Touche.
So yeah, that was my nerdy things. Usually I don't have very many, but this week I had a bunch.
It's been a good week.
It has.
It has been a good week. As we go deeper and deeper into the book, I feel like our episodes are getting longer.
This one's shorter than last week.
I know it is. I'm proud of us. Next week is going to be a special bonus episode for the holidays. We are going to be watching and talking about the supernatural episode, A Very Supernatural Christmas, which is from season 3. It is episode 8. So make sure you watch and listen.
For exclusive content and to keep up with all things nerdy, follow us on Instagram at Our Nerdiest Thing. We post book reviews, what to read next, and our cocktail recipes. Have something nerdy that you'd like to share? Email us at ournerdiestthing@gmail.com. This podcast is edited and produced by The Story Guides. Thanks for listening.